Hi, my name is Will Leach, author of Marketing to Mind States, and this is your Mind State Messenger. There's a thing that we oftentimes forget about doing when we're doing our behavioral design marketing or maybe our customer experience. And that's really understanding and accounting for culture in your marketing and how that impacts not just your sensitivity to different topics, but actually the colors, the words, the visuals, all the things that you do to make your brand become special with different people in different cultures. So, first off, let's talk about how important it is to understand culture. Now, did you know that culture affects not just what people will look at, but actually how people think? So, you must account for this in all of your behavioral design, marketing, and your customer experience. Now, I am not a cultural anthropologist, and I know just enough to get myself in a little bit of trouble here. So, if you're a cultural anthropologist or you know of a great book, share it. Let us all know about it because it's really important to understand cultural differences and how that impacts your marketing. But there's this book I read a couple of years ago. It's called The Geography of Thought from Richard Nisbett. Now, it's a little bit dated and it's a really simplistic way of thinking about culture because it looked at regionality as a cultural norm, right? So it looked at Western cultures versus Eastern cultures and talked about what makes us kind of different and how that impacts how we look at issues. And some of the things that, it's really important coming out of that book is after I read this, is how important it is to consider culture in your strategy and executions. And this is something I hear about all the time. In fact, a couple of years ago, I was at a table where I was explaining to maybe about 12 different people the concept of behavioral design, which you and I talk about all the time, right? I talk about behavioral design in all these videos. And I remember somebody at the table said, the one flaw I see in everything you're talking about is it doesn't take into account culture. And I said, well, it kind of does, but she was absolutely right. I don't know enough about cultural anthropology, but I do know how important it is to bring it in to your marketing and your creative because it will impact not just your strategy, but ultimately your tactical executions. Why? It's because in the most simplistic ways, if you just want to have some common things to know, Western cultures think very differently than people who grew up and live in Eastern cultures. So I just pulled out a few of these things that I know from mostly through regulatory fit theory. But it's something that I want to convey. These aren't rules to go by, but these are things for you to start considering. Wow, if these are just some basic things going on by culture, maybe I should learn a lot more, especially as our messaging goes out to many different cultures and many different geographies in the world. So here's just a handful of things. What we know from a lot of work around regulatory fit is that in Western cultures, people tend to be in what's called a promotion regulatory focus, meaning that they naturally think about seeking to maximize gains in life. Where people in Eastern cultures are more likely to be in what's called a prevention regulatory focus, and they seek to minimize risks and minimize barriers to reaching their goals. Neither one is good or bad, but they are different. So, second thing is in Western cultures, being individualistic and liberty is a really important social construct, where in Eastern cultures, group dynamics and norms and relationships are seen as being much more influential. So take that in consideration. Where in Western cultures, you may be more gains focused, people in Eastern cultures tend to be a little bit more pain focused and trying to mitigate bad things from happening. Therefore, in Western cultures, when you think about the design of some of your creative, you may be more interested in thinking about focal points on moments of usage. So imagine if you're going to do a photo shoot, you have a product that you want to really highlight. What's really important in Western cultures would be to focus on that moment of truth, that moment of opening the gift, of using that gift. However, in Eastern culture, context matters a little bit more. So therefore, you may want to show how what's going on in the background, a little bit more expansive view, because context is going to matter. Seeing more and more people interacting at a party or something would make more sense. In Western cultures, you want to focus on forming out groups in marketing. It's us versus them, or it's me versus that other person. And in Eastern cultures, you want to form in groups. It's us. You want to talk a lot more about us because relationships matter. Some small things, you would emphasize speed and progress of your new technology. In Western cultures, where you take that same technology and place it into an Eastern culture ad, you may want to talk about more about the innovation's accuracy and the ability to control. And there are many, many more things. And these aren't always, must-haves, but I do know that the way people look at the world differs by geographical regionality as well as different cultures. So my point to you is this, is understanding cultural differences and how, these cultural things work help you understand these differences that are so critical in your marketing. And I don't mean from a superficial point of view. I mean really understanding cultural anthropology and how these mental models work in different cultures will help you take a much stronger step to growing your brand or business using the power of behavioral science. If you enjoyed this email, forward it to a friend and consider joining the Mindstate Marketing Facebook page to engage with other fans who want to grow their business using behavioral science. And if you want to see more of these types of videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Mindstate Group, and consider listening to our weekly podcast, The Mindstate Marketing Hour, on all major podcast platforms.